Today I'm going to be showing you how to build this draining board around our sink unit. Again, there isn't a cut-in list for this one, but I'll tell you how to measure for your draining board as we go along. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to begin by cutting a little strip to go along the back there, which the taps will stand on, or the faucet. So position your sink where you want it to stand, and I'm having it so it's in line with the centre of the window there. And then bring in your rule and measure from this left-hand edge of your sink to your wall. So if I lay that along there, for mine that is 107 millimetres. So I'm going to cut a piece from 2.5 millimetre sheet wood, measuring 107 millimetres, and then I probably just want to make it so that it comes from the wall to the centre of this back piece of the sink. And in my case that is going to be 8 millimetres. So that's the first piece to cut. So that's that piece there, and that will sit along there and into the corner, just overlapping the back of the sink by about 1 millimetre. Now you've got that piece, you can measure for the rest of the draining board. So bring the sink unit out there like that. Let's move that out of the way. So holding that in place, you then want to measure along the length from, probably again so that you're overlapping by about 1 millimetre. Go all the way along to the end of this back strip, and about as thick as the sink minus about 1.5 millimetres or 1/16 of an inch. So that's our draining board, and in a moment we'll score some grooves in there. Now I'm not going to stick all of this together yet because again I want to apply the wood dye first so that we don't get any glue residue marks. So I'm just going to sort of have to hold it all together. But I'm going to put it down on my work surface so that I can show you how to build up this piece. But the first measurement you need is that back measurement. Then your draining board, and then you can work away from the sink because we now know how big everything else needs to be. So let's put those down there and pop the sink out of the way. So then what I've cut here using 1.5 millimetre sheet wood, 1/16 of an inch, is a piece that will come along the front, and that's why you leave that 1.5 millimetres at the edge of your draining board, so that you've then got room for that to stick on there, and that as well will be sitting just on the edge of your sink unit. I've then done a piece to go along the back there, and that is 4 millimetres high. And then I'll have a little piece coming around the edge there as well, and that will sit there, and then that one will join up with those two. It's difficult keeping it all in position when it's not glued. So that will go along there. So basically I'm putting like a little border around the edge. So this bit needs to be 4 millimetres high, and then plus the 2.5 millimetre thickness of the draining board so that these pieces match up. So that's basically the draining board. We're going to, like I say, put some grooves in the draining board, and then I want to round over the end of this front strip just to make that look a little bit nicer. It looks as though I need to do a little bit of sanding here just to get those to line up, so I'll do that as well, just take a little bit off there. And then what I've also cut here are some legs. Now we could just stick that into place, but we want to make it look as though it's not just hovering there. So I'm using 5x5 strip here, and the width of this piece needs to be the width of the entire sink unit. So measure right across from the back to the front of this piece, and that will be your width of your leg section. So from there right to the front of that piece, and in my case that's 38 millimetres or 1.5 inches. So these strips plus the thickness of the leg measures 38 millimetres, and again that's really simple, just a little frame that we'll be making up like that, and that will stick underneath the draining board, and then we can stick that to the wall just to give it a little bit of extra support. You don't really need anything the other side because that's going to be hidden away. Now obviously I'm measuring to fit this into the corner of my room box, but if you just want to make this as a freestanding piece in your kitchen, then obviously you can do it whatever size you want. Okay, so we'll make those couple of preparations and then we can apply the wood dye. So the first thing I want to do is just round over the end of that front strip that will go along the front of the draining board there. So just hold it against your sandpaper at a 45-degree angle, and as you sweep it towards you, bring it into an upright position. Like that. Just take that corner off. Like that. Just do a little bit more actually. Another couple of sweeps. And then you can tidy that up with a piece of sandpaper, just to make that into more of a curve. Like that. And now I want to score some grooves into the draining board. So I just want to start by making a little line about 6mm or 1/4 of an inch from the end of the draining board. So this will be the end near the wall. So just do a little mark to each side like that and then join that up just lightly. And that's where my scores will go to. I don't want them to go all the way along. And then this measures 30mm, so I'm going to do the marks 6mm across as well. So do just little pencil marks along that line there. 18 and 24, so just 4 grooves, and then do them at this end as well. Oops. Like that. And then bring in a flathead screwdriver. We're just going to use the corner of the tip there to score the grooves. So hold the rule so that it's sort of just below your pencil marks, just to allow for the thickness of your screwdriver. Hold tightly onto the rule and then just bring the screwdriver along. Just do a faint score to start. Go up to your line at the back there, and then you can go in a little bit firmer. And then just do a couple of more scores like that. And by doing that light one first, you're more likely to stay on track. Sometimes you find that the screwdriver can just sort of shoot off across the wood like that. So again, a light score, and then a little bit firmer. Then you'll need to turn the piece around to come back the other way, so that your rule doesn't tip off the edge of the wood. And then just come down from that line. Like that. Okay, so I'm now going to sand all of these pieces to prepare them for the wood dye. So after sanding, I used a dry brush to get rid of all of the sanding dust. And for these pieces and for all of the projects in the room box, I'm going to be using this antique pine wood dye. And when you're using a wood dye, you've got to give it a really good shake, otherwise all of the sediment sits at the bottom and you just sort of get a wishy-washy orange colour when you apply it. So I've got my nitrile glove on here to protect my fingers from the wood dye. And I'm going to do both sides of each piece. So I've got a plastic tray here to put the pieces on once I've applied the wood dye. So I've got a couple of pieces of kitchen towel here. Once I've applied the wood dye, I just lay that on there, give it a dab, and that just removes the excess. And that piece can be put to dry. So that's one coat on those pieces, and once I've glued it all together, I'll do a second light coat. And one other thing I just wanted to say, when you're using wood dye, make sure that everything else is moved out of the way, because no matter how careful you are, it does tend to be rather splashy. And if you get it on any of your other pieces or anything else on your desk, then it's quite difficult to get off. So my draining board pieces are now dry, so I'm going to begin construction, and I'm going to start with the leg section. So begin by applying glue to each end of each of the supports. And I've got a little bit of 6x3 strip here, just a little bit out of my spare drawer, that I'm going to use as a spacer to position that bottom support rather than drawing lines onto the legs. So glue the top one into place so it's flush along the top of that leg. A nice straight top along there. And then put the, wrong way around, put the spacer at the bottom of the leg there. And then glue that one into place. Keep that there for a moment to keep it level. And you'll find once you've applied wood dye that the glue takes a little bit longer to adhere, so you might just have to press a little bit harder to get it to stick, and it will take longer to dry as well, more so than if you were sort of putting it on untreated wood. So give those pieces a press, and really careful as you do that so it doesn't pop apart, and then that can go to one side to dry. So with my draining board, I'm going to start by attaching the sort of tap support, if you like, along the back of the draining board. Like that, so make sure you've got these right hand ends flush. Just put glue on there. Always good to have a piece of kitchen towel handy. So give those a press together. I'm then going to attach the back strip, which will sit up along there, and there will be a gap at this end because then our piece that comes forward will come off of that. Get that roughly into position, and I'm then going to bring in a piece of that 6x3 strip, a longer piece, just so I can make sure that that's sitting right to the back of that piece there. That will square it off as well. So give that all a really good press. Again, get rid of the excess glue. And this piece will sit along there. I'm just going to pop a little bit of glue at the end of that longer strip as well. And then along the bottom of this one. Again, get that roughly into place, and then we can bring that strip in to help position it correctly. Make sure it's all the way to the back. Again, give that a good press. Oops. And we can come along the front here with our rounded edged piece. So I'm going to put a bit of glue down the side there, and then actually along the front of the draining board. Down, press that into place. Again, use your strip to help sort of press it all together. Make sure that's flush with that edge there. So I'm going to let that dry off for a moment, and then we can actually attach that to the sink and get it into place. So I'm just going to begin by putting a bit of glue around those outside edges of the sink, just along the back and side. Sort of get that roughly into place. Okay, so a couple of things with this. When I tried it, where I've curled the paper around this side wall, it doesn't press flat against this wall here. So I just sort of cracked the paper in there just using a piece of strip wood so that I can push it right into that corner. So if you need to do that, just be really careful so that you're not going to rip your paper above where the sink will sit. You want that to be hidden sort of below it. And then where I've got the skirting board, the legs won't sit directly at the end of the draining board. They'll come in a little bit so that again they're sort of as far over to that wall as they can go. But I actually like the look of that so far. I'm going to leave that to dry off for a moment before I try and fit it into place. So what I'm going to do is actually put the glue around the back and side of the draining board, get that into place, and then just sort of slide the legs under. And I think that's going to be easier just to get the position exact because of that skirting board there. Now if you're not actually fitting it into a room box, then you can fit those legs at the edge of the draining board. But otherwise it might just be worth waiting, getting it fitted, and then just sliding the legs in like I'm going to. Glue around there. And I want to be really careful here because the draining board isn't fully dry yet, but I just couldn't wait to get it into place. And I don't know if you can see on camera, but that corner, and I'll show you closer up in a moment, is actually going into the paper there. But I'm okay with that because I'm going to be doing a sort of little display on there anyway, so that will be hidden. But obviously the best way of preventing that is, if you're doing one sheet of paper, is to really work it into the corners with a piece of strip wood or something to get that nice sharp corner in there. But I didn't really think about that when I was doing it. I think it just went back a bit there because it's not completely dry. I'm really pleased with this so far. So I've got a bit of glue on there. I'll just get rid of that. And in this case it really is the you know, the wall that's supporting the piece of furniture rather than the actual piece of furniture itself, if you see what I mean. So to make it sturdy, or you'll make it sturdy by gluing it into place. Okay, like that. And then the legs I want to come in about there, and they will still just go under. Okay, so I just want to put a bit of glue along the top and then along the bottom support, which will actually be touching the skirting board. A bit along there and then along there as well. So I get it under like that and then put it into position. So that goes against the skirting board, and then I just need to make sure that I've got a straight line along there from the front edge. Have a look from the front. Quite happy with that. Just give it a gentle press at the top there. I think the draining board's more or less dried into place now. Give it a squeeze underneath as well. I think that looks quite good. So what I want to do now is attach my taps. Now I was going to use a mixer tap, but they come up a little bit too high, so I'm just using these single little taps. And I'm going to put one either side of that sort of central join in the window there. And for that I've got here some super glue gel. Now the nozzle on this is actually blocked, so what I like to do is just use a cocktail stick and take it straight from the actual tube. So quite a bit has come out there, but let me get a clean cocktail stick. So just put a little bit on the bottom of the tap. You don't need too much of this. I'm just trying to get a little tiny bit there. Dot that on. And put that into place. Sorry if my hands are in the way, let me just get it into position. That needs to just come in a tiny bit. A gentle press. And then the remaining one. Like that. And there is our completed draining board. I'm really pleased with how that's looking. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.